Well, first off, I want to point out that you are wearing a T-shirt underneath your topical punch shirt.
Am I meant to have? Am I meant to have chest hair out? Is that
Yeah,
the?
you can't go to
Okay.
Hawaii and not have your chest hair popping out.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, maybe next time
Yeah.
we'll have the chest hair out. Hello, 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 and welcome to Topical Punch, the series where we wear Hawaiian adjacent apparel and talk about topics that are relevant. Speaking about relevant topics, we wanted to do this video months ago, but we've both been extremely busy with lots of different projects. But we're finally getting to it. We're going to start discussing our experiences with Kingdom Come, and more importantly, Kingdom Come 2, which Nick, we both had a little bit of experience in. We're two different extremes. First of all, what's your experience with the first game?
My experience with Kingdom Come Deliverance is pretty in depth, considering I did the documentary on the game.
Yeah.
So I was following that game since before it was even on Kickstarter. That was like I remember the day that Kickstarter launched, because like I had been waiting for a big medieval open world, like historical RPG like that forever.
Yeah.
Like, that was my dream game as a kid. I'm extremely excited for it. I put a lot of hours into the first Kingdom Come, and it really, there's not too many games like it anymore. You know, RPGs are very much RPGs where it's loot and gear score and all that, but like Kingdom Come Deliverance really nailed the, I mean, they wanted to be Skyrim but medieval, and they really kind of nailed it for what it was. I think most everybody that played it was really impressed with it. But coming into Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and then, you know, they've got the budget and the team now to really make what they wanted to make the first time, is what they're basically preaching it as.
Yeah, and that really shows, which we will get into. I just want to kind of speak about my experience with Kingdom Come. I haven't finished it completely, but from what I have played, the thing that really set the game apart for me was the realistic representation, not just through narrative but through gameplay, of rising from peasantry and kind of digging yourself out of those trenches, and how that's explored through how people treat you, and like the kind of situations you get yourself into. I think no other game in my memory has ever emulated that to such a degree. And in my mind, I'm kind of with you. Like, I wanted the scale to be a bit larger. I wanted maybe the combat system to be a little bit more in depth or reactive. And for me, I think they really nailed that in Kingdom Come 2. So speaking of that, what have you experienced in Kingdom Come 2? Because we weren't at the same event. We were at two different ones.
But yeah, no, I got to see it at PAX West, and I got to do, I think we did mostly the same demo. You have a quest to basically go steal a sword from this guild, and then basically pin it on another faction. It's been a while since we played the demo, but you basically want to try to pin it on a faction so that you get this guy out of debt or something like that. And the way the quest is designed is it's a stealth quest, but you can basically do it however you want, and there's all kinds of different outcomes based on a ton of different things. And it's not just, it's, you know, choose option A, B, or C, and then D, E, F happens. It's like there's choose option A, B, or C, and then all kinds of spaghetti comes off of that, and then all these different things can happen that I wasn't even expecting. So
yeah, it's a reaction based on your inputs in the games and how you play, rather than like a direct choice you made, like you said, ABC. If I remember correctly, one of the things was like there are rival dueling clubs in the city.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and they you're basically going in to steal their guild sword to effectively embarrass them and make them seem weak, and then hang it up in front of the town hall as basically a symbol to say, fuck you, like you guys are weak, we can just break into your, or someone can break into your guild and just take your most prized possession. But that's what I mean by someone, because based on your actions, or what happens during that, how that guild perceives you, and then has consequences for those actions, is all based on what happens during that mission through your gameplay. So for my example of what happened, because I'm really interested to hear what happened with yours, you can sneak in, right? So I I was given some information that I know the guild leave the building at a specific time, like it's when they leave. So I waited for that time and then tried to find a door to get in. So I started lockpicking, and it was like the first time I'd lockpicked in the game. And then as I was lockpicking, the dude who owns the guild, the rival, opened the door on me, like into my face. And he was like, "What are you doing?" And I basically had to kind of talk my way out of it, which I was able to do. If I remember correctly, I paid him off. I had some money at the time, so I paid him off. But then I proceeded to wait a little bit longer and get in. And I got the sword and hung it up in front of the town hall. But because of that, they knew I was present in the environment. And it wasn't necessarily a situation of we knew you did it, but we have cause to believe that you tried to do it. So that had ramifications for what happened afterwards, which is Nick will go into it when he talks about his experience, but the ramifications for doing this is there's this massive duel that happens between 3 of each of your guild members. There's like a big duel that happens in front of a congregation of peasants, and based on that, the outcome of that duel can be different. So mine, I think, went relatively what I would consider normally, but your duel had an effect based on your outcome, right?
Yeah, so I had mine was a pretty goofy experience too. So I also snuck in. I did not get that information that they ever left, so I just went in as soon as it was dark.
Oh god.
I made it in like to the second floor without being spotted, and then one of the women in the guild like walked out. She's like, and I'm like just literally just sitting there crouching in the hallway, and she's like, "The hell are you doing?" And I'm like, just taking this and leaving. So I took the sword and left, and then I think they saw me run out because I heard a bunch of people yelling behind me. And I got away. So like the cops were definitely chasing me. Well, the cops at the time were chasing me, and then I got away. So when I got to do the check-in for the, like, I hung the sword up and everything, we get to the thing, and I'm basically bullshitting my way through the entire conversation. And I spent like 5 minutes doing that, and at the very end they're like, "I mean, we saw you, dude. Like, we know it was you." So my outcome was that the guy I had to duel got armor, and I did not.
As like recompense for the for like them. We're part of the rival guild, right? So as punishment.
Yeah. But like he's kind of said at the very start of that, I really like that it's all tied to gameplay, like decisions you make in gameplay, because so many RPGs lately are just choose an option, see what happens. Like, I'm playing Dragon Age Veilguard right now, and it's like, okay, I have 3 dialogue choices. Nothing's really going to change gameplay wise. It's going to change, who lives or dies or a story decision, but like, it's not reactive gameplay, and I feel like that's been missing from a lot of RPGs.
Yeah, I'm glad they're leaning into that a lot more. One of the problems being honest, so like in my experience, I was in Prague with the dev team at an event for influencers, so I got to play a lot more than you. I played a lot of the early game, and then some in the mid game, and in Kuttenberg, this city. And there are choices in dialogue, right? These things do still exist. But even within here, it's so hard to do those kind of choices. Like, I experienced it at the beginning where I was like, I'd pick an option thinking it would say one thing, and it said something a little bit different, and it kind of breaks you out a little bit. But then further into that opening, choices started being made based on gameplay, and it just feels so much more organic, and it makes me want to save Scum less. Like, if I pick an option,
you just let it play out,
right?
And see what happens.
Yeah. It feels natural, it feels organic, and it's really hard to do. And I really give props to the narrative team for getting all these options in, like the combination of gameplay and narrative, like really coming together. That's the beauty of games for me, and I'm glad games are starting to try and take that leap. It's really nice. What did you think about the actual battle you got to do? Did you get to do the duel in your time?
I did not get to do the duel. I only had 30 minutes at the demo.
Okay.
So, but I did do like the practice combat, and I know you haven't finished Kingdom Come Deliverance, so one of the interesting things about the design of that game is like the combat is intentionally like obtuse and difficult at the start of the game, which I think a lot of people kind of missed. because the way the game works is the more you practice at combat, the better you get at it. And not just like you as a person, but like Henry as the character. And so he gets more timing and all that kind of stuff to be, more fluent with his sword. I never really liked the control scheme of the first game. It just like directional combat can be really hit or miss. Like For Honor does it really, really well.
Agreed.
But Kingdom Come Deliverance was kind of iffy, and they only had one combat designer at the time that did all that stuff. Now they have, I think I said in the video, they have 5 now. 5 people working on it. So it feels a lot more modernized and something closer to like almost Chivalry 2 in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, in which is going to make it a lot more accessible for people, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I also think like you really nailed it on the head there with the idea of the kind of intentional clunkiness of the combat at the beginning of Kingdom Come Deliverance emulates Henry's journey to become something more than a peasant, right? And now that Henry's journey narratively has taken that leap, they can mechanically take that leap as well to have things be more complex. I know at the event, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, because it was a while ago, that a lot of the different weapon types have different movesets now, rather than a hammer having the same sword moveset. It's like a hammer has its own.
In the first game, you would like literally jab with a mace, which never made sense.
Yeah. So it's all shifted and changed,
Yeah, they all have their own unique movesets now. And hit correctly, when you hit with a mace, you're bashing somebody, you're not stabbing them with it. So.
Oh yeah, and ranged weaponry, boomsticks are now a thing. We got to use those for a while. There was this really cool, the opening of the kind of 4-hour-ish demo I played was a siege of a castle, and it was very intense. I think this was a cool, the community saying, hey, the scale of these battles is very small in Kingdom Come Deliverance. Like, we want more. This felt like just an answer to that question. Like, oh, you want more? Here's more.
I didn't get to see that.
Oh, it was incredible. I got to experience that. I got to experience the opening with Henry, and kind of an introduction to the further plot, which was really gripping, and again does a lot of these gameplay centric choices. And then I got to do Kuttenberg, which is where I did a lot of combat for my time, but some of the main stuff was in that duel towards the end, because it does last for a long time, because it's 3v3, and there's some really interesting choices you make during that battle that you probably didn't get to see, which is to do with like certain members cheating, and or potentially cheating, and you having to make calls on like what happens, what are the ramifications for that. And I feel like it does feel a lot closer to, say, your For Honors or your Chivalries and stuff like that. It's a little bit more accessible, but because of that, it kind of makes it a lot more reactive. Like, I feel like I can see something coming and have the time to have that reaction. And again, I feel like that emulates Henry's progression and being more of a knight now, rather than a peasant who's just learning to fight in the mud and stuff like that.
Yep, that was one of my there's a bunch of missions in Kingdom Come Deliverance that I always remember, which is a good sign of a good RPG.
Yeah,
because like there's that right at the start of the game, I think he like slings shit at that bully guy. And then there's also like if you didn't make it through most of the game, you probably didn't get to the drunk priest quest, but that one was hilarious, and you gotta go play that quest.
They were talking about it at the event, right? I think it's a very memorable one, because a lot of people were talking about it.
Speaking of priests, I got to go see, when I was filming the Kingdom Come Deliverance documentary, we got to go to Rattay and Sasau, were the big churches in the original game, but you got to go see Kuttenberg, a whole city.
Yeah. So in this game, they explained after our play event, because we played first, and then we had a lot of our press interactions and stuff like that. And this is probably one of the, not to blow smoke up their arse or anything, but man, this is probably like the best press event I've ever been to. So they explained after the play event, when they allowed us to go into Kuttenberg, that this is one of the most intense cities they've ever done. They're attempting to make one of the most detailed cities in gaming. And even though I only got about an hour with it, I really got to explore and experience a lot of the different, not just environments, but speaking to all of the NPCs and seeing all the different buildings. I really feel like I didn't have enough time with it, because a lot of NPCs were trying to stop me or trying to get my attention, and I wanted to finish this main quest, right? Because I knew I had limited time, but it felt so lived in and alive. And what really put that nail in the coffin for me was, after this event, they were like, so by the way, if you didn't realize, we are in Kuttenberg, this city that you've just been exploring. We're now going to go on a historical tour of this city. And it took about like an hour and a half to 2 hours to walk around this city, and they had guides for this city. They also had people in full costume holding screenshots from the game, showing you exactly, this is what you saw, and this is what Kuttenberg is in real life. And it was like one for one. Obviously, it's set in a completely different time period, so the buildings have changed slightly. But
oh, you mean you didn't like see like medieval peasants on the street?
No, well, apart from the people dressed up. But like, so for example, the town hall is a big central piece of that kind of demo that we got to play, and where you hang the sword. And we went there, and they were like, by the way, this is where you hang up the sword. And it was like, I saw the Matrix for a second. I was like, oh my god, I'm in the game. It's crazy how one for one they've done it all, and it got me excited to play the game more, because they were like, Kuttenberg is a historic mining town. I think it was like silver that it was famous for. Could be wrong. And because of that, it was one of the richest, if not the richest place in Europe at the time. It had like a bank, or like where they made coins, and they took us there to where they made all this currency, and took us through the buildings. And they said that a huge parts of the plot are to do with this silver like mining coin facility and all the castles and stuff there. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. Like either breaking in or like having plot to do with that. It just made me so excited, and it really just blew me away, the level of authenticity they added to that environment. They really care, including the mayor of Kuttenberg like met us and was like, we really love this dev team. They're like holding our heritage so close to their hearts and stuff like that. And that's what I want out of RPGs, right? I want to see that kind of authenticity, that kind of love for like real world history, rather than just generic RPG slinging magic and stuff like that. Let's get more history.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like, Sasau was like such a big part of the original game, and getting to see that, and Rattay, where like the old castle used to be, but the Rattay specifically has been like modernized, obviously. But it's kind of funny, like going through the countryside of Prague, or in the Czech Republic and all that. Like, there's so many old castles that they were telling us like they just sell them to people for cheap, and then people like build houses within the castle. So there's like a bunch of houses out in the countryside that are like literally just encircled by walls from old castles.
Europe, man, Europe.
Yeah,
it's wild. I can't think of any other experience where you can sit down and play a game, and then go outside and experience like the exact same thing. And well, not exact same thing. I'm not dueling people in the streets. But speaking of that, at the end of this event, actually, I'll say I've got two more things to say about the event, because it just blew me away. We were in this cathedral that they had full knights in armor like guarding this cathedral, and we went in, and they had the composer of both the games with a live orchestra, and we got to sit in this cathedral listening to songs from the new game, and hearing the composer talk about at what point of the game it's from and why he wrote it the way he did, and it was absolutely magical. And then to top it all off, they took us to a medieval banquet where we had loads of different medieval themed foods. It was very authentic, and then it ended with a battle recreation where we got to see knights in armor fighting and dueling just like in the game.
Damn.
And getting to fire crossbows and stuff. It was wild. I loved it. It's rare that getting a taste of a sequel makes me just want to go and play the original beforehand. Usually I'm like, okay, I'll get a synopsis of the narrative and move forward. But like seeing that there's such an evolution between Henry's gameplay and that being a narrative thread really makes me want to fully experience that story before I jump in the sequel, but I'm super looking forward to it. We might be doing like a design delve or something. There is going to be. We've got some plans to get some devs on DevHeads to talk about some of these things, because I had a lovely sit down with a lot of them there. So look forward to that, guys.
I'm always huge into medieval history stuff, so this game's been on my wish list since the day I finished the first game and went into the documentary on it. And yeah, I hope with all of our new camera gear, drones and all that stuff, God, I want to get back out there and film that again.
All right, well, thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll both catch you in the next Topical Punch, where we'll be talking about something else. Bye!